Michigan begs the feds for more vaccine as it faces the worst surge in the country. Iran says Israel hit its nuke facilities in a weekend cyber attack. And who will and will not be in attendance at Prince Philip's funeral next weekend? Monday Need to Know. Let's go. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need to Know podcast for Monday, April 12th. I am Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Hey, Carlo. Good morning.
Good morning, Jill. How was your weekend?
It was nice. How was yours?
It was okay. I'm in a bad mood this morning. I've been in a bad mood all weekend, actually. I just, well, you can get to the news and I'll explain why. I don't feel very good about where we are right now. I know I've been very optimistic lately, and I'm just not feeling that way today.
All right, so let's get to the news and then you can lay it on us, okay?
Okay.
The South African variant of coronavirus may be able to at least partially evade the Pfizer vaccine. Now, this is according to a real-world study in Israel. It has not been peer-reviewed, and we're still talking just a few cases, but just something to keep an eye on. In Michigan, Governor Whitmer is asking the White House to up the federal vaccine allotment to the state, which is now facing the worst surge in the country. And Carlo, according to doctors on the ground, this is actually worse than at any time during the pandemic so far. The Biden administration says sending more vaccine to Michigan not on the table, though it will help Michigan administer doses faster. Georgia, North Carolina, and Colorado have temporarily shut down sites administering the J&J vaccine after some people experienced adverse side effects, although it's to be expected.
Yeah, those adverse side effects, you know what they are? Dizziness and nausea from like a dozen or so people. Bunch of wimps. That's what I say. This is so stupid. What are we doing? What are we doing? We're shutting down vaccine sites now? I mean, are you kidding me? Excuse me. It's like, so I talked to somebody on pretty good authority over the weekend who said that New York City is having a really hard time getting vaccine uptake amongst city employees, higher than 50%. That's not good. Yeah, that's really not good. But CNN reported over the weekend that 40% of Marines are declining the vaccine. I just out of curiosity, because I have nothing else to do in my life. Actually, I have a lot to do, but this is how I spent my weekend. I tried to make an appointment at CVS in 3 different cities. I just put in zip codes in Cleveland, Nashville, and Tucson, and I had no problem. I got appointments in all 3 of those. I mean, I didn't actually make the appointments, but I was able to make appointments in all 3 of those cities. That to me suggests that we're going to hit this wall soon that we've been talking about, where the supply problem becomes a demand problem, and that really freaks me out a little bit, Jill.
Well, Carlo, on that note, I thought it was always a problem when the states early on were opening up vaccines to anybody. When they were like a few of the states that were making eligibility available early on. You had the Alaska and West Virginia that were just crushing vaccinations. But the other states, it was like, what's going on here? Are you not able to find enough people, that's 60 and up who want this vaccine that you now have to just open it to everybody? So we were like the media in general was making it like this was like celebrating it. But I always thought to myself, no, this is a problem. Like they shouldn't be giving they shouldn't be making the vaccine available for everyone so early.
Yeah, no, you may have been onto something there. I mean, I think if we don't get to herd immunity, do people understand what that means, right? It means that this thing is going to continue to mutate, and it means that it never ends, right? Because the boosters aren't going to help if there's a new strain, right? If this thing mutates to a point where there's a new strain, that's going to require a whole new vaccine, which means we're going to have to be doing this whole song and dance again next year or whenever that happens. Or maybe we just get these periodic flare-ups, which means periodic lockdowns. I hope to God that I am wrong about this, and I'm still generally optimistic about the current state of things to a degree. Like we are going in the right direction still, but I'm worried more long term now. And I think, the fact that so many people have had COVID helps us. That's going to help us get to herd immunity, I think. but I just don't feel great. And the reason why I've just been bummed this weekend about this is I'm starting to get really angry at these people. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I know that I said this the other day, but people have been sort of whining about these vaccine passports, this idea that like you're going to have to show a vaccine card if you want to go to the movies or if you want to get on a plane. I mean, look, like if you don't want to get you don't want to get vaccinated, fine. Like you do you. But that to me, that makes you no longer part of like polite society. So you can't go to the movies. You can't get on a plane. You can't go to a restaurant. At least in Carlos America, that's how it would be. I wouldn't hire somebody who refuses to get vaccinated at this point. And I'm really sick of tiptoeing around this. Like I understand it's everybody's personal decision, right? We're not the Communist Party of China. We're not going to mandate that people get vaccinated. But I'm down to start shaming people. I mean, I really am. We have 30% of people in this country, Jill, that just straight up do not believe anything they hear. Right? They don't believe public health advice. They don't believe politicians. They don't believe anybody in the media. They don't believe their religious leaders, their community leaders. And we're now seeing that manifest itself in a way that's going to hurt all of us. Right? This is a real problem. I'm done catering to those people. Like if you want to live in an alternative reality, fine, go for it. But I'm done with that, right? I am done catering to that.
Speaking of an alternative reality, I watched Into the Storm. I don't know if you've seen it yet. It's that docuseries. It's on HBO looking into the QAnon movement. The filmmaker eventually figures out, or at least he thinks that he figures out, who Q is. And I'm not going to give anything away for anybody who's still watching it or plans to watch it. But it is just so fascinating. And it's kind of like he speaks to the people who created 8chan, which was what the New Zealand shooter, the mosque shooter, used to stream his video. Yep. It's just so fascinating, and it's like I don't know. I don't want to say too much without giving away who Q is. But please watch it. I feel like we could almost do a whole podcast on that.
Yeah. I know. I've been meaning to watch it. I honestly, I turn it, I like get ready to put it on, and I'm like, I can't handle this. I can't put more of this stuff into my brain, but I will watch it, Jill. By the way,
it's heavy. We still it's heavy, but if you want to understand where we are right now as a society, and why there's just so many people who are distrustful of anything the media says, and it's I think a must watch to kind of understand this moment in time in this country.
No, you're right. We still haven't discussed the WeWork documentary. We'll have to do that some other day.
And just back to COVID, this fourth wave is no joke. As we were talking about in Michigan, hospitals filling up with younger people. These variants are more contagious and they're more deadly. There's a wait time now in Michigan to get into certain hospitals. COVID, once again, I will say, hitting close to home for me. A kid in my daughter's school has it, not her class, thank goodness. But it's been a while since we got one of those emails titled Health Update. And a bunch of parents and I were texting saying, wow, like it was just like it put us back into this reality that COVID is still here, because in so many ways, the teachers are all vaccinated. So many of the parents are vaccinated, and it's easy to feel like, okay, this is yesterday's news, but it is not. And again, these variants are affecting kids a lot more. Kids still, luckily, a minority here. They're not, in most cases, not getting quite as severe. Still, right, that storyline remains, but not the same way that we were seeing it. More and more kids are getting sick, and more kids are getting severely sick. And it's this weird dichotomy. It's like the parent, what do you do? I've been talking about this with a lot of friends and colleagues who have kids. It's like, if you're vaccinated, but your kids aren't, what does that even mean? What can you do? What's safe? Can you go to restaurants? It's a weird time. And I just think for any of us to think that this is behind us, it's not. So I appreciated, Carlo, your frustration in terms of people who don't want to get vaccinated. You know what? If anyone's listening and they don't want to get vaccinated, I would love to hear why, with no judgment, really. Please email us in. I'm curious what some of the reasons are.
Yeah. Well, look, I'll say, I mean, Becky's not vaccinated. Becky has, I mean, she's pregnant, right? She just doesn't want to, she wants to wait. And I totally understand that. We made that decision together. And I respect that. And I respect people who have like reasons why they might not want to get this vaccine right now. But just this blanket idea that like we're not going to get it because we don't trust it because I think this thing is going to turn us into, lizard people or whatever. Get real with that. I'm done.
And I think that you also and the side effects. I don't think the media is doing as good job here. The side effects are in most cases extremely mild, and we're talking like a sore arm, a little bit
Yeah.
of tiredness, and not only that. It's so minor, right? Like it's one in like 150,000. There was some stat I saw that, and it just look, the media, you cover bad news, right? That's
Yeah.
unfortunately what we do. So are we
Right.
hyping up the side effects and almost making it seem like they're a bigger deal than they are? I don't know. A sense of normalcy across the pond for the first time. Pubs in Britain serving their first pints today after months of lockdown. The country enters the first phase of its reopening. It's scheduled to culminate on June 21st. Thousands of businesses are opening with capacity restrictions in place as the UK appears to have emerged from the worst of the pandemic, with about half of the population at least partially vaccinated. We'll also talk about Prince Philip, by the way, a bit later in the podcast.
Yeah, in true British fashion, I just sort of got a chuckle by this. This is a big day over there, and sure enough, it's like 30 degrees in London today, snowing, sleet. These poor folks can't even can't catch a spring day. But hey, great news over there, and I'm very happy to see that some of these, that was the most stringent lockdown in the world essentially, and it's finally starting to ease up, which tells you that we can get there.
Also overseas, Iran calling a blackout that hit its underground atomic facility over the weekend a quote act of nuclear terrorism. No country has taken responsibility for the suspected act of sabotage, although the New York Times and other outlets are reporting that Israel likely had a role.
This happened at Natanz, which is the this big secretive underground atomic facility that holds their centrifuges. It has been the target of suspected attacks by both the Americans and Israelis in the past. So it certainly would not be surprising if the West, especially if it was Israel. It's hard to imagine that the U.S. would be behind this right now because we're trying to get Iran back up to the table on the nuclear deal. So it just seems like the timing would not be great to also hit their nuke facilities. But it certainly wouldn't be surprising to hear that Israel played a role in this.
Something to keep an eye on today. The National Guard has been deployed to the Minneapolis suburb of Brooklyn Center after police shot and killed a black man during a traffic stop, sparking overnight protests and looting. According to the police, 20-year-old Dante Wright was pulled over for a traffic violation when officers determined that he had an outstanding warrant. They tried to arrest him. He re-entered the vehicle and was shot, and then drove several blocks and crashed.
Yeah, so this breaking overnight here, I looked into this a little bit. Mr. Wright's mother telling reporters yesterday that he had called her when he was being pulled over. He said police pulled him over for having air fresheners hanging from his mirror. I guess that's the point at which they ran his plate and discovered that he had an outstanding warrant. It's not clear what that warrant was for. Police say there were body cams. Those have not been released yet, so look for that hopefully today to get a little more info on this. I say this because, this shooting happened 10 miles from the courthouse where Derek Chauvin is on trial. That city of Minneapolis and those suburbs just, it's very delicate, I guess you'd say, right now. And this is, sort of throwing a match onto the tinder there. But certainly something to keep an eye on.
Are you not allowed to have air fresheners hanging from your mirror?
If you're a young black guy, probably not. No, I mean, like
I feel like I've never heard of that.
It was like there was another story over the weekend of this guy who was an active duty, I believe he's active duty Marine, who was pulled over. Where was that? North Carolina, for a window tint, and the cops got up in his face and told him he was going to ride the lightning if he didn't, get it, if he wasn't, if he didn't do what they said. So yeah, I think
that
they kind of
was incredible. I mean, in terms of just how troubling and disturbing it is, it was all over social media this weekend.
Yeah.
Okay, it has been confirmed that Prince Harry will attend the funeral of his grandfather, Prince Philip, who died on Friday at the age of 99. Buckingham Palace made that announcement just as we were finishing the podcast on Friday. The palace says that Harry will return to London while Meghan Markle will stay behind in California on doctor's orders because she is pregnant. Harry's attendance at Philip's funeral comes amid his rift with the quote unquote firm. It could overshadow the service, which is expected to be a pretty small affair that pays tribute to the Duke of Edinburgh's decades of that were spent at the side of Queen Elizabeth in service of the crown.
Poor Harry. I gotta say, damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. Right? If he can't not go, it's his grandfather. But the media is going to end up focusing on him. Right, he will in turn get blamed for taking the focus off of Prince Philip. Meghan Markle probably actually dodged a bullet here by not having to fly to London for this. But that's not to say. I mean, Prince Philip was just somebody who I've talked about just from what I've learned in The Crown is a really sort of fascinating character, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think hopefully for Prince Harry and Prince William, maybe this will be what brings the family back together in some capacity.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes a tragedy. But Prince Philip really such an important figure in Britain. And it is so cliche that Americans, especially our generation, in many cases, we learned about Prince Philip through The Crown.
Sure.
It's like, I hate to even say it, but it is kind of true. But
Yeah.
he gave up his career in the Navy to, as we mentioned before, in service of the crown. The Queen was thrust into that role way before she thought she would have to take over. And right now we don't think of that as a big deal, like the woman being not the breadwinner, but like the woman being the central figure and the man kind of taking the back seat. But back then, that was a really big deal, and not quite common at all. And his death, in some ways, for a lot of people in the UK here, a precursor to the Queen's. She's been serving for what, 7 decades, even more. And I think it just symbolizes and signals, according to a lot of the reports that I've been watching, that this country just one step closer to passing the torch to the next generation.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, one thing I always liked about Prince Philip, which Prince Harry, the same goes for him. He was like an elite, right? He was a member of his own royal family, and he fought in the war, right? He fought the Nazis. He didn't have to do that. I always respect people who serve when they could get out of it if they wanted to, if that makes sense. Also, another notable death, which is obviously completely different, but I just wanted to make sure we mentioned it. Something a little more near and dear to my heart as somebody who grew up listening to his music. Earl Simmons, the rapper better known as DMX, he died on Friday at the age of 50. He suffered a heart attack a couple weeks ago that left him in a coma. DMX remembered coast to coast over the weekend as just an extremely influential New York City rapper. His raspy voice, explicit lyrics, and numerous run-ins with the law sort of belied a sort of funny and gentle side that has resurfaced in a lot of clips on social media in the aftermath of his death. I don't know if just in Brooklyn this weekend, it was like every second or third car was just blasting DMX songs. It was kind of funny. But I have friends who hung out with him. He actually grew up in the town next to where I grew up. They said the same thing about him. So a big loss for the hip hop community as well as his 15 children.
That's so fascinating about being in Brooklyn for this because in the suburbs, you don't get that at all. That sense of kind of like community. And obviously the pandemic has changed everything anyway. But I remember even when Michael Jackson died and Prince and being in the city and you'd pass bars and they'd be playing their music. It's just a different type of experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember Michael Jackson, that one, everybody on the street was just bumping, like Beat It. Yeah, that was wild.
Also on Friday, Amazon successfully held off a potentially historic union vote at one of its fulfillment centers in Alabama. This is a major blow to organized labor. Amazon employees at the Bessemer plant overwhelmingly rejected union representation. The vote was 1,798 to 738 from a pool of about 6,000 eligible voters. The national union, RWDSU, claiming that Amazon intimidated workers by, among other things, forcing them to attend anti-union meetings.
Amazon says the employees were subject to plenty of anti-Amazon messaging just from the media and politicians and the union itself, and they still voted against unionization. So yeah, definitely a big setback for organized labor in this country. This would have been the first union in it for Amazon in the United States, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the end. I mean, this is just one factory of many, but I think it certainly means that others that might have been thinking about it may at least put those plans on hold for now.
In sports, Hideki Matsuyama became the first Asia-born man to win the Masters after entering the final day with a 4-shot lead that he never gave up. Matsuyama was congratulated by his hero, Tiger Woods, for becoming the first Japanese man to win a golf major.
Oh, Master Sunday. Great stuff yesterday. One of my favorite days of the year. Matsuyama, incredible performance. He shot a 65 on Saturday, an eagle and 4 birdies on the final 8 holes. Amazing stuff. This guy is an absolute star. He's a stud in Japan. Not very well known here. That's going to change now that he has a green jacket. Also, there was a great viral moment that I liked. I don't know if anybody else caught this, but right after his historic win on the 18th hole, his caddy actually took his hat off and bowed to the green in a show of respect to the course at Augusta National. I really liked that.
Wow, that's awesome. That is awesome. Yeah. And quickly, Paramount, the latest studio to reshuffle its upcoming release slate with no less than 3 Tom Cruise movies affected. The Top Gun sequel moving from July to November. That bumps Mission Impossible 7 from November to next Memorial Day. And that in turn bumps Mission Impossible 8 to 2023.
It also bumps the G.I. Joe spinoff Snake Eyes with Henry Golding, that really handsome guy from Crazy Rich Asians. That moves up from October to July. The next Jackass movie gets bumped from September to October. And Dungeons and Dragons with Chris Pine, goes from 2022 to 2023. So it's definitely some musical chairs happening here, just as these theaters these studios try and get the most bang for their buck on these big blockbusters. But by the way, listen to all those movies we just mentioned. Not a single original piece of IP. Pretty amazing, right? Sort of tells you everything you need to know about the state of Hollywood.
If you want something original, you have to go to Netflix or a streamer. Amazon Prime or Apple TV Plus. That's basically what, like, for somebody like me who's just uninterested in any of those movies, there's nothing for me at the movie theater anymore. And it's been this way for a while. There's no good rom-coms. There's no good dramas. There's nothing.
Right. Yeah, and those movies, they still get made, but they get picked up by the Amazons and the Netflixes and the Hulus of the world. They don't get theatrical runs anymore, and I don't think they're going to get theatrical runs after the Panini's over.
The what?
Panini.
Did you just call the Paninis is that your cute way of calling is that your cute way of saying the pandemic?
Yeah, do you like it?
For someone who went on such a rant about vaccines,
I know.
I feel like
I'm in a better mood now,
Joe. I'm in a better mood. Chutzpah on your end to call it the Panini.
You're right. I'm sorry.
Okay, let's leave it there. That's what you need to know for Monday, April 12th.
I'm sorry I was such a bummer today, guys. I had to get that off my chest. I'll be better tomorrow.